Right now, somewhere in America, police patrols are moving a little more slowly through city streets. Not because something has already happened, but because officials are preparing for what could happen. Surveillance units are paying closer attention. Intelligence analysts are reviewing digital chatter most of us will never see. Federal agencies are quietly coordinating behind the scenes. None of it looks dramatic from the outside. There are no sirens, no breaking emergency broadcasts, no visible panic. But the posture has shifted. And when posture shifts in national security, it's rarely random. The reason is simple, at least on the surface. Officials believe retaliation could be coming. Not necessarily in the way most people imagine. Not a missile blazing across the sky. Not fighter jets suddenly appearing on radar screens. Not an invasion scenario pulled from a movie script. What concerns security agencies right now is something far less predictable, far less visible, and in many ways far more complicated to stop once it begins. After the recent strikes carried out against Iran and the reported death of its supreme leader, the strategic temperature changed almost overnight. Warnings escalated, rhetoric intensified, threat assessments were updated, major American cities were placed on heightened alert status. That phrase alone, heightened alert, has a way of triggering immediate fear. It sounds urgent. It sounds like something is about to happen. But before we jump to conclusions, we need to slow down and understand what it actually means. The question isn't whether tensions are high. They are. The real question is what that translates to in practical terms. What does it mean for New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, Washington, D.C.? What does it mean for airports, subways, financial markets, digital networks? And most importantly, what does it mean for everyday Americans just trying to go about normal life? When news of the strikes first broke, the global reaction was immediate. The United States, alongside Israel, carried out operations targeting Iran. Reports began circulating that Iran's supreme leader, a figure who had held power for decades and shaped the country's identity for nearly 40 years, had been killed. For many inside Iran, that was not just a political event. It was symbolic, emotional, deeply personal. Leaders who remain in power for decades often become intertwined with national identity itself. Removing them from the equation, especially through military action, creates shockwaves that extend far beyond military strategy. Almost immediately, Iranian officials signaled retaliation. Public statements suggested consequences. Messaging from Tehran hardened. President Trump responded with equally direct warnings, stating that any counterattack against the United States would be met with decisive force. That exchange of rhetoric created a volatile equation: a major strike, confirmed casualties, strong language from both governments, global media coverage amplifying every word. In that kind of environment, intelligence agencies don't wait for confirmation of action. They move into precautionary posture. But here's where the narrative often becomes distorted. When people hear the word retaliation, the mind immediately jumps to conventional warfare, missiles crossing oceans, air defense systems activating, massive military exchanges unfolding in real time. That imagery is powerful, it's dramatic, and it spreads quickly across social media. But according to multiple defense analysts, that is not the most realistic scenario under consideration right now. Launching a direct missile strike from Iran to the U.S. mainland is extraordinarily complicated. The geographic distance alone presents logistical barriers. More importantly, the United States has invested heavily in layered missile defense systems over decades. Early detection satellites monitor launches globally. Naval defense systems are positioned strategically. Ground-based interceptors exist specifically to counter long-range ballistic threats. No defense system is perfect, but the probability of a missile traveling undetected and unchallenged across that distance is extremely low. And national security planning is built on probability assessments, not worst-case cinematic scenarios. So if not missiles, then what? What officials are focused on is something less visible but more ambiguous: Asymmetric retaliation. That phrase sounds technical, but it essentially means responding in a way that avoids direct conventional confrontation. Instead of tanks or aircraft, it might involve indirect tactics. Instead of uniformed militaries, it could involve individuals or small networks. Instead of explosions visible from miles away, it could involve disruptions that ripple quietly through digital infrastructure. One scenario analysts often reference is the lone actor, an individual who becomes ideologically motivated by global events and decides to act independently. That person would not necessarily receive direct instructions from a foreign government. They might not even have formal contact with one. But geopolitical flashpoints can inspire isolated individuals in unpredictable ways. History has shown that moments of heightened international tension sometimes correlate with isolated acts carried out by individuals seeking symbolic impact. Another possibility is a sleeper-style activation. Individuals who have lived quietly within a country for years, waiting for a signal or a moment of heightened tension. It's important to stress that there is no confirmed evidence of an active sleeper network tied to this situation, but intelligence agencies plan for categories of threat, not just confirmed plots. The absence of confirmed evidence does not eliminate the need for preparedness. The challenge with asymmetric threats is detection. They don't involve large troop movements. They don't require formal declarations of war. They don't always generate clear intelligence signals in advance. Sometimes they involve minimal communication. That unpredictability is what shifts agencies into heightened vigilance. At the same time, it's critical to separate preparation from prediction. There is no public intelligence indicating a specific, imminent domestic attack tied to this escalation. Cities are in prevention mode, not response mode. That distinction matters more than most headlines emphasize. Prevention mode means increasing patrol presence. It means strengthening coordination between federal and local law enforcement. It means reviewing contingency plans. It means analyzing digital vulnerabilities. It does not mean something has been scheduled. In fact, historically, many periods of heightened alert pass without a single incident precisely because visibility and deterrence work. Major metropolitan hubs including New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, Seattle, Miami, and Washington, D.C. are seeing increased security posture. These cities share common characteristics: dense populations, financial infrastructure, transportation networks, symbolic landmarks recognized globally. When agencies allocate precautionary resources, they prioritize locations where potential impact would be highest. On the ground, heightened alert looks methodical rather than dramatic. More patrol vehicles stationed near transit hubs, increased presence around bridges, tunnels, and airports, intelligence units coordinating in real time with federal partners, adjusted staffing schedules to ensure rapid response capability. From the outside, daily life continues, but behind the scenes, monitoring intensifies. And then there is another dimension of modern conflict that doesn't involve streets at all: the digital domain. In today's interconnected society, digital infrastructure underpins almost every aspect of daily life. Financial transactions, air traffic scheduling, hospital record systems, energy grids, communication platforms. A well-timed cyber disruption can create confusion across multiple sectors without firing a single shot. That is why cybersecurity experts consistently warn that during periods of international tension, the digital arena becomes especially relevant. There is no confirmed cyber attack currently disrupting U.S. infrastructure connected to this situation, but cyber analysts often speak in terms of windows of opportunity. If someone intended to create maximum disruption, they would likely choose moments when dependency is highest: weekdays, peak market hours, high travel volume. That doesn't mean something is scheduled. It simply reflects how strategic timing factors into cyber planning. Unlike kinetic attacks, cyber operations often aim for psychological and economic ripple effects rather than physical destruction. A temporary outage in cloud services can prevent millions from accessing email. A delay in trading platforms can generate financial anxiety. A disruption in scheduling systems can cascade through airports nationwide. Most of these disruptions, if they occur, are temporary, but their psychological impact can be significant, especially during already tense geopolitical moments. This layered reality, physical vigilance combined with digital awareness, is what defines the current posture. Not panic, not inevitability, vigilance. Meanwhile, images from overseas have added emotional intensity. Protests near U.S. embassies, demonstrators expressing anger over recent strikes, security barriers reinforced, windows damaged. Those visuals circulate rapidly online. But symbolic unrest abroad does not automatically translate to coordinated domestic action. Intelligence agencies monitor such events not because they confirm a domestic threat, but because rhetoric and imagery can sometimes inspire isolated actors elsewhere. Adding further gravity are confirmed reports that 3 U.S. service members have been killed amid the broader escalation. Whenever American personnel are lost, the strategic equation shifts. Domestic pressure increases. Calls for response grow louder. Historically, such losses often lead to calibrated countermeasures designed to reinforce deterrence. President Trump has publicly stated that further threats against the United States will not be tolerated and would be met decisively. That language is designed to project strength. In deterrence theory, clarity is intended to prevent miscalculation. The goal is to draw lines so clearly that crossing them appears too costly. Whether such messaging stabilizes or intensifies the dynamic depends on internal calculations happening far beyond public view. And that is perhaps the most important point to understand. Much of what determines the next chapter in this situation is unfolding behind closed doors. Strategic deliberations, intelligence assessments, diplomatic backchannels, none of it visible in real time to the public. For now, what is visible is this: increased vigilance, layered defenses, and a shift in posture built on probability rather than panic. This is not a countdown clock. It is not confirmation of an inevitable event. It is a reminder that in moments of geopolitical tension, preparedness rises quietly long before headlines declare crisis. What often goes unspoken during moments like this is how much of national security operates in silence. For every visible patrol car parked near a transit station, there are dozens of analysts behind computer screens reviewing fragments of information that may never turn into anything actionable. Intelligence agencies don't just react to confirmed plots, they analyze patterns.
They study shifts in rhetoric. They monitor digital ecosystems where anger, ideology, and misinformation can blend together in unpredictable ways. And right now, that monitoring has intensified.
When geopolitical flashpoints occur, especially ones involving high-profile casualties and strong public statements from world leaders, the digital conversation changes almost immediately. Online forums light up. Encrypted messaging channels become more active. Hashtags trend. Rumors spread. Some of it is noise. Some of it is emotional reaction. But buried inside massive volumes of online traffic can sometimes be signals. That's what analysts look for, not dramatic declarations, but subtle changes in tone, frequency, and coordination. One of the reasons asymmetric threats are so difficult to assess is because they often blur the line between inspiration and direction. An individual does not need to receive formal orders to feel compelled to act. Sometimes global events serve as emotional catalysts, and in the digital age, exposure to those events is constant. Images, commentary, opinion, outrage, all of it moves at the speed of a refresh button. This is where misinformation becomes a secondary risk factor. During tense international moments, misleading claims can spread faster than verified information. A video taken out of context, a headline framed dramatically, a rumor presented as fact. Within minutes, millions of people can be reacting to something that hasn't been confirmed. That reaction itself can create instability, even if the original claim was false. Security agencies understand this dynamic well. They not only prepare for physical or cyber threats, but also for information distortion. Because panic, once amplified, can disrupt public confidence even without a single physical incident. Financial markets respond to perception. Travel patterns shift based on fear. Consumer behavior changes when uncertainty grows. This is why officials often choose their words carefully during heightened alert periods. They aim to acknowledge risk without triggering alarm. That balance is difficult. If messaging sounds too calm, critics may accuse leaders of minimizing danger. If it sounds too urgent, it can unintentionally amplify anxiety. The line between transparency and escalation is thin. At the local level, law enforcement departments are operating within that same balance. Police chiefs in major cities understand that visible presence serves two purposes. It deters potential bad actors, and it reassures the public. When people see patrol vehicles and officers stationed at key locations, it signals preparedness. But those same departments also know that over-militarized visibility can create its own tension. The goal is steady vigilance, not visible crisis. Preventing a lone actor scenario is one of the most complex challenges in domestic security. By definition, lone actors often operate with minimal communication. They may not share plans widely. They may not seek funding or coordination. That reduces the digital footprint available for interception. Over the past decade, law enforcement agencies have adapted by investing in behavioral threat assessment programs. These programs analyze warning signs such as sudden changes in rhetoric, public declarations of intent, or attempts to acquire weapons under suspicious circumstances. Still, no system is flawless, and that reality is important to acknowledge without dramatizing it. Absolute prevention in an open society is nearly impossible. What agencies aim for instead is risk reduction, narrowing windows of opportunity, increasing friction points, strengthening response time, mitigating impact. While much attention focuses on physical threats, cybersecurity professionals remain equally engaged. Over the past several years, both state and non-state actors have demonstrated the ability to probe infrastructure vulnerabilities. That does not mean every period of tension results in cyber retaliation, but it does mean infrastructure teams remain alert to unusual network activity. Banks run stress tests. Energy grids maintain redundancy layers. Cloud service providers deploy rapid response teams. Airlines coordinate with federal aviation authorities to ensure contingency planning. Hospitals maintain backup protocols for digital record access. These measures are not activated because collapse is expected. They exist because resilience is built into modern systems precisely for moments like this. An important point often overlooked is that successful cyber defense rarely makes headlines. If an intrusion attempt is detected and neutralized quietly, the public may never know it occurred. That invisibility can create the illusion that threats are either exaggerated or non-existent. In reality, prevention frequently operates behind a curtain. At the geopolitical level, strategic calculations are unfolding simultaneously. Iran's leadership faces internal dynamics, as well as external pressure. When a long-standing supreme leader is killed, the domestic audience becomes a critical factor. Governments in that position often feel compelled to demonstrate strength, not only internationally, but internally. Public perception of resolve can influence political stability. However, demonstrating resolve does not always mean escalating into open conflict. It can take symbolic forms, limited actions, cyber gestures, diplomatic signaling, strategic restraint framed as calculated patience. Analysts studying the situation are asking a central question. What form of response would allow Iranian leadership to project strength without triggering overwhelming retaliation? On the American side, the calculus involves deterrence and containment. Strong public statements from President Trump serve a purpose. They communicate red lines clearly. In deterrence theory, clarity reduces miscalculation. The objective is to make potential escalation appear too costly to pursue. But deterrence depends on credibility and interpretation. If one side misreads the other's threshold, unintended escalation can occur. This is why back-channel communication often becomes critical during moments like this. Even when public rhetoric sounds severe, private diplomatic channels sometimes remain open. Those conversations rarely appear in headlines, yet they can play a decisive role in preventing escalation from spiraling. Meanwhile, for the average American, daily routines continue. Commuters board trains, flights depart on schedule, markets open and close, schools operate, restaurants fill with customers. That continuity is not accidental. It reflects the stability of systems built over decades to withstand periods of strain. History provides perspective here. The United States has faced elevated threat environments before, after 9/11, during conflicts with Iraq and Afghanistan, amid tensions with North Korea, during confrontations with Russia. In many of those periods, alert levels rose, security presence increased, intelligence monitoring intensified, yet daily life largely continued without widespread disruption. That does not mean risk was imaginary. It means layered defenses functioned as intended. Fear often operates in absolutes. Either everything is safe, or catastrophe is imminent. But national security operates in gradients. Risk levels rise and fall. Alert postures adjust accordingly. Preparedness expands or contracts based on probability assessments. Right now, the assessment has shifted upward enough to justify vigilance, not panic. Vigilance. Another factor shaping this moment is the unpredictability of independent actors far removed from official state control. In previous geopolitical flashpoints, individuals in different countries have acted independently, claiming symbolic allegiance to one side or another. Sometimes they exaggerate their connection. Sometimes they act impulsively. Sometimes they are intercepted long before plans materialize. Intelligence agencies monitor for shifts in online rhetoric that might indicate such inspiration effects. They analyze spikes in extremist language. They track patterns of digital engagement around certain narratives. But the volume of global communication is immense. Filtering meaningful signals from background noise is one of the most resource-intensive aspects of modern intelligence work. At the same time, civil liberties remain a central consideration. In a constitutional democracy, surveillance authorities are bound by legal frameworks. Expanding monitoring too broadly risks infringing on rights. Restricting it too narrowly risks missing warning signs. That tension is ongoing and constant. It becomes more pronounced during periods of heightened alert. For communities across the country, the practical takeaway remains measured awareness. There is no directive to alter daily life, no instruction to avoid public spaces, no indication of a specific location under imminent threat. The increased security presence is precautionary, and historically, precautionary measures often expire quietly once tensions stabilize. Stabilization can occur in several ways: diplomatic engagement, strategic signaling that both sides interpret as sufficient, domestic political calculations that favor restraint, economic considerations, international pressure. All of these factors influence how long heightened alert periods last. The coming days and weeks will likely involve continued monitoring and careful messaging. Analysts will watch for any indication of escalation in rhetoric or action. Cybersecurity teams will continue scanning for anomalies. Local law enforcement will maintain visible readiness in major hubs. And federal agencies will update threat assessments as new intelligence emerges. What is crucial in moments like this is proportional response from the public. Consuming credible information, avoiding amplification of unverified claims, recognizing that heightened alert is a protective posture, not evidence of inevitable harm. The United States has built multiple layers of defense: physical, digital, diplomatic, and strategic, precisely because the world is unpredictable. Those layers do not eliminate risk entirely. No system can, but they significantly reduce probability and mitigate impact. As of this moment, there has been no confirmed domestic attack connected to this escalation. Infrastructure remains operational. Transportation systems are functioning. Financial markets are open. The posture is watchful, not reactive. And perhaps that distinction matters more than anything else. Watchful does not mean fearful. Prepared does not mean panicked. Heightened alert does not mean countdown. We are in a phase of careful observation, a phase where intelligence agencies are leaning forward, where local authorities are reinforcing presence, where cybersecurity teams are tightening defenses. But we are not in a phase of confirmed crisis. Understanding that nuance allows perspective to replace speculation. As this situation continues to unfold, one of the most important variables remains human decision-making. Governments calculate risk. Leaders weigh options. Advisors model scenarios. But at the center of every geopolitical confrontation are people making choices under pressure. And pressure, especially after confirmed casualties and public warnings, can distort judgment if not handled carefully. The confirmed deaths of 3 U.S. service members add emotional and political weight to everything happening right now. When American personnel are killed in connection to an escalating conflict, the expectation of response becomes part of the equation. It shifts discussions from theoretical deterrence to visible consequence. Historically, moments like that narrow the space for inaction. They raise expectations both domestically and internationally. However, response does not automatically equal escalation. It can be calibrated, targeted, measured, designed to reinforce deterrence without crossing into open war. That distinction is critical because the difference between contained tension and uncontrolled conflict often lies in proportionality. Strategic planners on both sides understand that once escalation moves beyond a certain threshold, controlling it becomes significantly harder. This is why analysts frequently refer to off-ramps. Even in tense standoffs, there are usually diplomatic or symbolic pathways that allow both sides to claim strength while stepping back from the edge. Those pathways are not always visible to the public. They can involve indirect communication through intermediaries, regional partners, or quiet negotiations that never appear in headlines. The absence of visible diplomacy does not mean diplomacy isn't occurring. At the same time, internal political dynamics within Iran matter just as much as external signaling. When a long-standing supreme leader is killed, internal factions may compete over how to respond. Some may favor aggressive retaliation to demonstrate resolve. Others may advocate restraint to avoid devastating counterforce. Those debates shape outcomes in ways that external observers cannot fully predict. Intelligence agencies attempt to model these internal pressures, but no model can account perfectly for emotion, pride, or miscalculation. Back in the United States, federal agencies continue operating under layered preparedness protocols. The Department of Homeland Security coordinates threat assessments. The FBI liaises with local law enforcement through joint terrorism task forces. Cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency teams monitor network integrity across public and private sectors. These mechanisms were built over decades, particularly after 9/11, precisely to create resilience during uncertain periods. It's worth remembering how much institutional learning has occurred over the past 20 years. Communication gaps that once slowed coordination have been streamlined. Data sharing between agencies has improved. Rapid response frameworks have been stress-tested repeatedly. None of that guarantees perfection, but it significantly strengthens the baseline.